Welcome to the Ball State University Wrecking Crew headquarters. I'm Stephen Campbell. Joining me today is Dr. Chris Von Hoff, who is assistant professor of music, and he teaches trombone and is director of the trombone studio and trombone choirs. Chris, thanks for being here.
My pleasure, Stephen. Thanks.
So today we're going to talk a little bit. This time of the year is when a lot of high school students are thinking about majoring in music at the university level. They're getting all their materials together for their auditions and so forth. And so one post that you made on social media a while back was essentially like tips for these students to get their materials and themselves situated to be successful at these auditions.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought the best thing to do would be to have you here and let's go through those items so that if you may be watching and you're considering auditioning for music school at the university level, here are some tips that will help you to be a little bit more successful and to feel a little bit more prepared for that audition. So where should we start?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me that I did when I was growing up kind of accidentally, I didn't know it, is I actually started way before my senior year of high school getting ready for my audition. So a couple of these things are really essential. I think if you have even the slightest inkling of not even just being a music major, but continuing in your musical studies after high school, I think the best thing you can do for yourself is to get a private teacher, to find a fantastic teacher and performer on your instrument in your area and take lessons with that person on at least a semi-regular basis, every other week at least or something like that. That's going to be your number one path towards advancing as a player.
Private lessons matter.
Absolutely. Once that's in place, there are a number of other things that matter. That a lot of times, this is the difference between a student who is accepted into a program or the difference between a student who is accepted with a scholarship or accepted without a scholarship. And a couple themes arise as I have listened to a number of auditions. And the first one is that details matter. You're reading, if it's a classical, not a jazz improvisation audition, you're reading music off of a page, and the composer and or the editor has given you some instructions on that page, and following those instructions is important. So if it says forte, and then the next measure says piano, it's incumbent upon you to follow those instructions. Maybe that seems obvious, but a lot of people don't do that. So attention to those details definitely matters.
Yes. Playing what's on the page.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because that tells us, as listening as the committee, who we're dealing with. Because I think that one thing that we can agree on is studying music at the university level is much different than studying or than being a part of a public school music program.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because and I'm not saying, I don't mean that in a critical way. I'm saying there are different goals.
And when you're playing an audition and you take the time and the care to play everything exactly as it's printed on the page and in the proper style, that you're exactly right. That tells us on the committee that you're the kind of person who pays attention to detail and can follow instructions. Those are two essential qualities of a successful music major.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like following instructions in terms of bending to everybody's will. I mean doing what you're supposed to do to get the job done or to get the musical idea across to the audience.
Yeah. So two things. We're sort of I've already sidetracked us a little bit, but two things that I think we should point out. At least for me, the first thing along those lines is, I think that getting an undergraduate degree is 90% following the instructions.
Yeah.
I mean, there's very little room or necessity for like individualism. All you have to do is follow the instructions and you're home free in many ways. But the other thing for those people who may be watching is, before we go on with the rest of the points here, let's just take a quick second and talk about what the audition consists of. So essentially, generally speaking, it may not be this way at every school, but generally speaking, there will be, if you're going to audition as a brass musician, the members of the brass faculty will be sitting in the auditorium, listening to a prospective student play a couple of solo pieces and some scales, right? So you have to walk in, We're there and we listen for like an etude or a solo piece and some scales. So it's not a matter of just like one person saying yes, you can come to school here or not. I mean, like, 4 or 5 people or more in some cases have to vote on that and talk about it.
That's not the case at every school. Sometimes
Right.
you will just audition for your applied teacher on your instrument. But yeah, I think in my experience, the majority of places are a panel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note, too, I stress this to my students a lot. Yes, as we've been saying, following instructions is incredibly important. But something that I find is, I call it freedom through boundaries. If you do as you're supposed to do, that gives you the ability on the instrument and the ability as a professional to find your voice and to begin to express yourself musically and artistically in your own way. You're not exactly going to be able to accomplish those ends if you do everything completely on your own. As a favorite teacher of mine told me, it's far better to be a good imitator than a bad original. And I still live by those words.
Truth. Okay, so we've had private lessons matter, we've had details matter. Let's go on to the next item.
Well, basic technique. If you're a trombone player and you're not practicing on a regular basis out of the holy trinity of trombone books, the Arbin's Complete Method, the Rochu Bordoni Melodious Etudes, and fill-in-the-blank additional etude book, Foxman, Brad Edwards, Schlossberg, then you're doing yourself a great disservice. It's your job to make sure that your technique is cleaned up, in place, and allows you to, again, express the musical ideas you have.
Right. Technique matters.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then for us, there's a lot of the same things. Schlossberg, Arbin's, and then I guess our third in the Trinity would be Clark.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. But
there's a bass clef version of that.
absolutely.
You can play that too.
Yeah. Okay. So then now let's talk about grades. Grades matter.
Absolutely, grades matter. Yeah. This is a conversation that I find myself having frequently. Oftentimes, it'll be making a decision between two students. Both play, maybe one plays better but has bad grades. The other plays well, maybe not as well, but is still a strong player and is checking all of our boxes and has great grades. That, to me, is somebody who's going to succeed more as a music major. The music major, regardless of if it's education or performance or media production or any other degree program, is an intense major that requires really good balancing of time management and lots of obligations. If you have good grades and good test scores from high school, that is indicative of somebody who's going to be able to handle the rigors of the music major. That's not to say that if your grades are not so hot that you can't make it in.
Yeah.
You can. You
Yeah.
absolutely can. But it probably will precipitate a conversation between you and I during your first semester, just to make sure you're on track.
Well, and one thing that I'm comfortable talking about is going into college from high school. I was not a good student at all.
Mm-hmm.
My grades were not good, and the only reason I passed any of my general studies classes in high school was because if you got a failing grade, you were not allowed to participate in the orchestra and the marching band and that sort of thing. That was my only motivation.
Yeah.
And so and I'm comfortable admitting that, but I got in college under the wire, and it was, and I've had conversations with my teachers that it was, if I wasn't a very good player, it wouldn't have happened.
Right.
So that might be a message actually, that if you're watching this and you might be a freshman or sophomore in high school, it's not too late, because say for example, if you've got B's and C's or something, I think the difference between having B's and C's and having mostly A's is probably an hour of studying a night,
Probably.
something like that, depending on depending on the student. So it's grades aren't everything, but grades do matter.
And it's funny, I'm the opposite. I was not a good trombone player in high school. I didn't practice. I took lessons, but I didn't really work very hard. I wasn't doing all-state. I wasn't doing honor bands, none of that stuff. But I was a very good student academically. And I know from speaking with my teacher, that was a big plus on my favor to get into the music school. Was I showed some aptitude on the instrument. I was teachable, but I had good grades and a good track record.
Yeah.
So you can come at it from either way, but just be aware that once you arrive, no matter what, you got to stay on top of it.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's not a finite,
Right.
but now you know.
Right.
So, okay, so grades matter. So let's go on to the next point. Appearance matters.
You walk into your audition, and you should be dressed in at least what I call business casual. A nice pair of pants, a nice pair of shirt. This level of unbuttonness is not acceptable. You should probably have just the top button unbuttoned if you're choosing to wear a button shirt. You do not need to wear your tuxedo. You also do not need to wear a tie. I can't stand playing with a tie personally. I don't like how it feels. But you can dress nicely. It's called business casual. We don't want to see your bare toes. We don't want to see sandals.
No.
Maybe the exception would be if ladies choose to wear a pair of nice dress sandals with the slacks they're performing in, or a dress. I think that would be okay. But gentlemen, please do not. Aside from that, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, as a sort of a litmus test would be if you look at yourself in the mirror, like does it look like you are a professional? Does it look like you care about,
Mm-hmm.
So, someone that shows up and they're wearing a shirt that says, my parents went to Mexico and all I got was this lousy t-shirt, or something. Well, that kind of shows us that maybe you're not taking this seriously, because we are taking it seriously. Right. And that's where we're coming at this thinking you're taking your studies seriously, you're taking where you want to go to school seriously. And when we see something like that, I think for me personally, that can be very disconcerting to see something like that.
Yeah, and then I would just finish by saying you want to look professional, but be sure you're wearing clothes that are comfortable.
Yes.
Like I said, you don't have to wear a tuxedo. Make sure you're wearing shoes that you're okay with standing in to play in, pants that fit well, a shirt that's not too tight, all of that. Make sure that you're at least comfortable.
Yeah.
You just want to look professional.
Just think about it. Put some thought into it. Okay. Scales matter.
They do. You will be asked to play scales at a college entrance audition. It can be for a variety of reasons. Assessing your range, assessing your sound quality. It can be a tiebreaker sometimes between two more or less equal students. But again, it also goes back to the fact that if the school where you're auditioning requires scales and you show up and you have them all prepared, that's a big positive in your court for acceptance. If scales are required and you're scuffling through, then that shows the panel at any school that you have not given the proper amount of time to prepare for that audition, which again does not bode well for life as a music major.
Absolutely. I think I don't know any music school that doesn't require scales as a degree as a degree requirement. So it's just something you have to do for many reasons, and that could be a whole other interview. Okay, goals matter.
Yes. When the panel, at least at our school, we like to ask, why do you want to be a music major? And I think, again, that's a fairly common thing to ask across the board at music schools. And if your reply to that is vague or not compelling, to put it nicely, again, that's something that's going to give us pause. If you display passion and a clear idea and understanding of why you want to be a music major, I know for sure that I'm put on this earth to play the French horn, to be a fantastic band director, and I want to play as well as I can, and I want to reach as many students as I can being a middle school or high school band director. If that's the case and we hear that, that's a very encouraging sign.
Absolutely.
That shows that you have something to grab onto, a long-term goal to get you through the dark days of practice rooms and band rehearsals and all the other things that happen being a music major. But if it's, well, I thought band class was fun, and I can't really think of doing anything else, you might want to think of doing something else or come up with a better answer and convince yourself.
Because again, and I think that we touched on this a little bit, but at any school, basically, the music degree is intense. And it's not, I think a lot of times people see professional musicians and they see the glamour, they see everyone's wearing their tuxedos and, and that sort of thing. But what they don't see is the amount of time and dedication that it takes. And so if you don't have a goal going into it, like you want to be you want to be involved in chamber music, you want to be an educator and that sort of thing. If it was just like, Well, being in marching band was fun because we got to eat candy and watch movies on the bus when we. Okay, well, I mean, no, I'm really glad that you had that experience, but that is not sufficient reason to study music at the university level.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just something to think about. So goals matter. Okay, uh, preparation matters.
Yeah, in case you haven't noticed, there's a little theme emerging here, and it's that when you walk in the door for your audition, you should already know how it's going to go. And the way you do that is, first of all, anything that's required by the school, you've prepared and practiced on a consistent basis for a couple of months in advance at least. The scales, the solos, if there are orchestral excerpts, if there's jazz improvisation, if that's part of your audition process, everything that the school wants, you've prepared. And then in addition to that, you've played this audition many times already. The first time you're doing this in front of people cannot be the time your first college audition.
That's not a good idea.
You need to find a panel of family members, of maybe a couple of teachers at your high school, play for some friends. Do it 3 or 4 times in front of a different group of people and play through everything. That way you get practice playing your audition and you are prepared. Yeah. So that again, when you walk in the door, you already know how it's going to go.
Yeah. And, the other thing would be, along those lines, consider what makes you the most anxious. So for me, what causes me the most sort of like performance anxiety is performing in front of 6th graders. It doesn't bother me to play in front of other college students. What do I care? And also it doesn't bother me to play in front of, top tier professionals either, because I want to learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, for 6th graders, playing in front of them, and maybe it's a little silly on my part, but I often think if I don't do well, maybe they don't want to be in music.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of dumb, I think, but it's the way I
don't
feel.
think so. No, the pressure's real. Yeah.
So, but that's going to be different for everyone. So if you get nervous playing in front of your peers or something, well, then play in front of your peers so that you kind of know how that goes. But yeah, don't let the first time you play the audition be the audition.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and so finally, familiarization matters. So in the sense of I think you want to go to the different campuses. You want to find out about the teachers. You want to introduce yourself to the teachers at that school and become familiar with the program before auditioning and before committing, to being there.
Yeah, I agree completely. This is an important thing for me. And to be clear, this is kind of the process of you auditioning the school almost. Regardless of what path you follow as a music major, whether it's performance or education or composition or jazz or whatever, the most time spent during your degree program is going to be with your applied teacher. You're going to have weekly, hour-long lessons with that person for at least 3.5 years. Some for music ed majors, then they student teach, otherwise up to 4 years. So you need to be sure, first and foremost, that is a person that you can work with. You need to understand that your personality and their personality jive well with each other, that their teaching style works for you, that the kind of music that they're interested in playing is similar to you, or at least somewhat appealing to you. And then in addition to that, that's a visit to campus is a chance for you to see, like, is it a nice building? Is this going to be a nice place to live? Because it's where you'll live for 4 years. Are the practice rooms okay? How does the band and the orchestra sound? How does the jazz band sound? What are some of the other? What's the band director like in rehearsal? Did you observe that? If you're going to be a music ed major, have you set up a meeting with one of the music ed faculty to talk to them and understand kind of their philosophy and approach? You're about to spend a significant amount of time and probably money going to a school. And if you go in and you are not aware of the person you're going to study your instrument with and the people you'll be in ensembles with and in academic classes with, then you're doing yourself a huge disservice. You don't want to show up the first day of classes not knowing what it's going to be like. You should know that already because you've had some interactions.
Absolutely.
And that also can mean you take a lesson with somebody and you say, that was really good. And I know that this person is a great player. I know this person is a great teacher. But I still would rather study with this other person that I took a lesson with. That's why you do it. It's not that you don't like this person. It's just you have a much more clear picture of how you're going to spend the next 4 years of your life.
Yeah, and that's important. I think that matters a lot. You have to be able to envision yourself being on a campus, being with that, with that teacher, because that relationship is important. So the other thing that I would say is, I think one thing that you and I, well, we agree on many things, but one thing that we agree on is that you should take a lesson with that person before showing up to audition.
Yeah.
For many reasons. Now, I'm not saying this would happen, but hypothetically, what if someone said, "Hey, that's cheating"?
Hypothetically, I would probably reply and say, no, that's not really cheating at all. Taking a lesson with somebody before you go to a music school is good for all the reasons I just listed. It's mostly for you to figure out what this person is like. Or is this someone you're going to be able to work with for a long time? Is this someone who you're going to not just have a good teacher-student relationship, but a colleague relationship when you graduate? My music education, all of my music majors, as soon as they walk across the stage and graduate, they're not my students anymore. They're my colleagues. We work in the same business. So that's really important. And I will say this, and I believe that it's true. I like to have a student who's auditioning for any degree program in music to come in and take a lesson with me, because there are a couple of reasons, and one of the biggest is I want to see how they respond to teaching and to interaction. If a student comes in and I'm trying to make an adjustment about technique or make some sort of suggestion that is central to my approach to brass playing, and they're completely opposed to doing it and refuse, that's probably not a good sign. It's nothing personal. It's just this person is probably going to have a hard time dealing with life in the trombone studio. Conversely, even if someone doesn't play, lights out, top of the class, they come in, they have a lesson, they're clearly engaged, they work on, they listen and try the things that we're working on in a lesson, and then they show up on their audition and like this little phrase idea that I suggested they're doing, or they're doing something along the lines of that in their own way, but it still has validity. That's important to me.
Yes.
That shows somebody who takes in information, assimilates it, and then is able to use that information for an improvement in their own performance. So, yeah, I don't think it's really cheating.
It's not. And the other thing would be, that these prospective students, I mean, they can do whatever they want. So they could go get a lesson with somebody from the Indianapolis Symphony or Cincinnati Symphony if they wanted. The other thing that I sort of alluded to earlier is, at least in our situation at Ball State University, you audition for the committee. So even if you thought it was cheating, the audition has to be approved by the committee.
There's a fail-safe in place.
Right. So there's no way to it's more than just one person, So so that matters. So,
and I would add one last thing with that too, and it's cost. This is going to be a teacher-to-teacher thing.
Yeah.
Some people are going to say there's no cost associated. If you're interested in coming to school here, we'll do 1 or 2 lessons for free. Some people will charge their rate no matter what. I would not let that come into your decision-making process.
No.
If somebody chooses to charge for every lesson they teach, regardless, that's their choice, and we need to respect that. If somebody does 1 or 2 for free, we also need to respect that. So that's neither here nor there. Just be prepared for either, I would say.
And don't worry about don't let that stop you from, you're investing in yourself, I think. And even if you decide not to go to school there, what that information you receive from that teacher could, very well, have an effect and cause you to think about something, down the road.
Right.
And I think that's important. I think we should be studying with as many credible people as we can, going forward in this thing. So,
I still try to take lessons myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I do. So, as a quick recap, private lessons matter, details matter, technique matters, grades matter, appearance matters, scales matter, goals matter, preparation matters, and familiarization matters.
It's true.
So, just remember those 9 easy steps.
And you'll be fine.
Well, this has been great. Chris, thanks for being here and talking about this. I think, well, hopefully it's going to help a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. I think it's important.
Yeah.
These are things that kind of I wish I'd known in high school and I never knew. And I think both of us are interested strictly with a video like this and just forcing high school students who are considering auditioning for music majors to begin to think about the process and
Yeah.
the proper preparation for that audition.
Yeah. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Be well and go practice.